Alex was born with a natural talent for gymnastics. From a young age, he displayed an uncanny ability to balance on beams, twist through the air, and perform flips that left onlookers stunned. Growing up in the small town, gymnastics quickly became his sanctuary, a place where he could express himself, push his limits, and feel truly alive. By the time he turned 16, Alex was already considered one of the brightest young gymnasts in the country. His coach, Jim Thompson, a former Olympian himself, often told anyone who would listen that Alex had the potential to be the next big thing in gymnastics. He was known for his explosive power, incredible agility, and a seemingly fearless approach to the sport. It wasn't just his talent that drew people to him. It was his infectious enthusiasm, his sportsmanship, and the sheer joy he exuded every time he stepped onto the mat. His parents, Elena and Marco, were his biggest supporters. They drove him to countless early morning practices and late-night meets, watching proudly from the stands as their son dazzled the crowds. Alex, for his part, felt he owed his success to them and to his community. He trained harder each day, determined to put his small town on the map and make everyone proud. By the time he was 18, Alex had won nearly every competition he entered, becoming a national sensation. The media began calling him the boy who defied gravity. He was set to compete in the national championships, the most important meet of his career. A victory there would secure his place in the World Championships, and perhaps even a shot at the Olympics. Everything seemed to be falling into place. The day of the national championships arrived, and the energy in the stadium was electric. The bleachers were packed with fans, banners waving, and a palpable buzz of anticipation filled the air. Everyone was there to see Alex, the small-town kid with big dreams. As he warmed up, he could feel the familiar flutter of nerves, but it was coupled with excitement. He was ready. His routine on the high bar was his most daring yet. It was a complex series of flips, twists, and turns, designed to push the limits of what seemed humanly possible. As Alex mounted the bar and began his routine, the audience watched in awe. He moved with the fluidity of water and the strength of steel, executing each move with perfect precision. Then, at the peak of his routine, disaster struck. As he launched into a particularly difficult dismount, he felt a searing pain shoot through his lower back. In an instant, his body twisted awkwardly, and he crashed to the mat with a sickening thud. The stadium fell silent. Alex lay still, his face contorted in pain, and the world seemed to stop. Paramedics rushed to his side as the audience held its breath. He could barely move. Every breath was agony. The pain was excruciating, and he could feel something was terribly wrong. At the hospital, the diagnosis was grim: a slipped disc with significant nerve damage. The doctors told him that any further strain on his back could lead to permanent injury, or even paralysis. Gymnastics, they said, was out of the question. The news hit Alex like a sledgehammer. The sport that had defined his life, his dreams, and his identity was now being taken away from him. He was devastated. For months, Alex battled with depression and despair. He felt like a bird trapped in a cage, watching his dreams slip further and further away. His body, once a machine of precision and power, now seemed fragile and broken. The pain was constant, not just physical but emotional, a dull, throbbing reminder of everything he had lost. Friends and family tried to cheer him up, but the disappointment in their eyes was unmistakable. He watched as his former teammates moved on, competing in meets and winning medals, while he was stuck at home, trying to get through each day. Even his coach, Jim, visited less frequently, unsure of what to say or do. Alex became withdrawn, shutting himself off from the world. He spent hours staring at the trophies and medals in his room, now seeming like relics of a life that belonged to someone else. His world had shrunk to the four walls of his room, and his spirit seemed to fade with each passing day. One day, as he sat on his bed, Alex noticed a scrapbook his mother had made for him over the years. It was filled with photos, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes from friends, fans, and coaches. As he flipped through the pages, he came across a quote he had once written himself. "Obstacles are what you see when you take your eyes off the goal." Those words hit him hard. He realized he had allowed his injury to become an obstacle that blinded him to everything else. He had lost sight of why he loved gymnastics in the first place: the thrill of the challenge, the joy of movement, and the love of the sport. That night, Alex made a decision. He wasn't ready to give up on his dream. He might never be the same gymnast he once was, but that didn't mean he couldn't still find a way to compete. He decided to channel all his energy into recovery, determined to fight his way back, no matter how long it took. The next morning, Alex called his coach, Jim. "I'm not done," he said with a new determination in his voice. "I want to try again." Jim was taken aback, but agreed to help him on one condition: that Alex would take it slow and listen to his body. So began the hardest journey of Alex's life. The days were long, and the pain was often unbearable, but Alex pushed through. His mornings started with grueling physiotherapy sessions, focusing on strengthening his core and lower back. He learned to listen to his body, to understand its limits, and to push them slowly and steadily. His evenings were spent studying videos of his past routines, visualizing each move, and mentally rehearsing every step. There were setbacks, days when the pain flared up, and he was forced to rest. There were times when doubt crept back in, whispering that he would never be the same, that he should just give up. But Alex silenced those voices with sheer willpower. He knew he had to fight not just for himself but for everyone who believed in him, for his family, his coach, and his town. After months of therapy, Alex began basic training at the gym again. He started with the simplest moves: stretching, balance exercises, and light tumbling. Every small achievement felt like a victory. He celebrated each milestone: the first time he could do a backflip without pain, the first time he managed a routine without stopping, and finally, the first time he completed a full practice session. 2 years after his injury, Alex was ready to attempt a return to competition. He entered a local meet, a small event with no big stakes, just to test himself. His heart raced as he stepped onto the mat for the first time since the accident. He could feel the eyes of the audience on him, some filled with curiosity, others with pity. But Alex had only one thing on his mind: to do what he loved. He performed a simple routine, nothing like the high-flying feats of his past, but every move was deliberate, precise, and full of passion. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause, and Alex felt a wave of emotion surge through him. It wasn't about winning. It was about proving to himself that he could still do this, that he was still a gymnast. Over the next year, Alex continued to train and compete, gradually increasing the difficulty of his routines. He placed in a few meets, but more importantly, he felt his confidence growing. His back still gave him trouble now and then, and there were days when he wondered if it was all worth it, but he never stopped. He had fallen in love with the sport all over again, and he wasn't going to let anything take that away. His story began to spread, and soon he became known not for his injury, but for his comeback. Young gymnasts started looking up to him, seeing in his struggle a reflection of their own fears and hopes. He started receiving messages from athletes around the world, thanking him for showing them that setbacks were not the end, but a chance to start anew. A year later, Alex found himself back at the national championships. This time, he wasn't the rising star or the favorite to win. He was the underdog, the comeback story that no one could have predicted. As he prepared for his routine, he felt a calmness wash over him. He wasn't here to prove anything to anyone but himself. He was here because he loved gymnastics. His routine was a mixture of old skills and new moves, reflecting his journey. As he moved across the mat, he felt a sense of peace. The cheers of the crowd faded into the background, and for a moment, it was just him and the mat. He landed each move with precision, his body moving in perfect harmony with his spirit. When he finished, the crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Tears filled Alex's eyes as he bowed, overwhelmed by emotion. He didn't win first place that day, but it didn't matter. He had won something much more important: his spirit, his love for the sport, and his belief in himself. Alex became more than a gymnast. He became a symbol of hope and resilience. He continued to compete, but he also began coaching young athletes, teaching them that success isn't about never falling, but about always getting back up. He started giving motivational talks, sharing his story and inspiring others to chase their dreams, no matter the obstacles. Years later, a young gymnast asked him, "How did you keep going when everything seemed lost?" Alex smiled and replied, "I remembered why I started. I remembered the joy of flying, the thrill of the challenge, and the love of the sport. And I realized that as long as I had that, I was never truly defeated." Alex's story became a legend, a testament to the power of perseverance, the strength of the human spirit, and the belief that no matter how many times you fall, you can always choose to rise again. And so, his story continues to inspire, reminding us all that greatness isn't just about the medals you win, but the battles you fight and the courage to keep moving forward, even when the road seems impossible.